Hello, everyone. Welcome to the dance floor. I'm your host, Soul Bad Greg. Thank you for joining me on a very special broadcast for December 7th. Uh, for those of you who may not be aware, or those of you who may be living outside the United States, today is the day that many of us Americans remember the events of Pearl Harbor, a date that will live in infamy and that changed the direction of an entire nation. With today's playthrough, I'm going to be playing three specific games. Kind of see my collection here on Steam. We're going to be starting off with a game that I really haven't played a whole lot of, called Victory at Sea Pacific. Simulates naval warfare in the Pacific theater of the Second World War, and it will be our jumping off point to the events of Pearl Harbor before the attack took place. So we'll be doing some maneuvers with the navies that were not docked at the harbor when the attacks began. Well, they've been moving. We will then be moving on. Excuse me, can't talk today. We will then be moving on to Battle Stations Midway, which is it's kind of a arcadey take of like ship-to-ship combat as well as aerial dogfights, also in the Pacific. This specifically taking place during the very beginning of the attack on Pearl Harbor, uh, from the viewpoint of uh, I believe it's a lieutenant. Uh, excuse me. That was interesting. My headset decided to turn itself off. I guess if it doesn't detect audio, it takes the initiative, I guess. So, but yes, this game it was an interesting game. It wasn't great, but it was fun. Um, I was really hoping to do Battle Stations Pacific because that's a much bigger, more grander version of Battle Stations Midway, and that also gives you the opportunity to take a look at the operations from the Japanese perspective as well as the American perspective. Unfortunately, the game doesn't seem to want to work anymore. Uh, Go figure, right? So, but we're gonna dive into Battle Stations Midway, so we can kind of see a ground perspective of the attack on Pearl Harbor, and then afterwards we're gonna move to a simulator, lauded by many as one of the greatest aerial dogfighting simulators ever made, Altu Stormovik. In which case we'll be playing a P-40 pilot out on patrol, just a routine day out on patrol in Hawaii when news is received that an attack is happening at the harbor and is scrambled immediately to post up any sort of defense. As we go through these different games, I'll be saying little tidbits of little portions of history. There's a lot that really needs to be understood about the attack on Pearl Harbor. Why it happened, um, how it happened, and just kind of the general history about it for people to kind of understand how we even got to that point uh, with Japanese and American relations being what it was in the first place. Um, it's actually been about, I think, roughly around probably two, maybe even 3 decades worth of buildup before exploding at the harbor the way it did. So, as we go through excuse me, as we go through these games, I'll say little bits here and there on uh, everything revolving around that conflict. Now, Victory at Sea here, uh, despite the fact that it's loud in my ears, let me lower this real quick on my headset. Make sure it's not too loud in the broadcast. Okay, we could probably get away with that sound. Do we want to skip the tutorial? No, because that is the main feature I want to show for this particular game. So this game here, Victory at Sea Pacific, is a grand Pacific simulation where it just doesn't whereas games like I try and back up here and not overload my mouth with trying to explain several things at once. This game does the best it can in order to show you naval combat on a grand scale. And I don't mean in simple RTS skirmishes like this, where you have your ships and you have some other ships over here and you attack each other and stuff like that. You know, games like World of Warships and, you know, Battle Stations Midway, they do stuff like that. Either by simulation or by an arcade means, which is fun, you know, and it's fine. This game, however, takes it a step further to where you're commanding entire naval groups in the entire Pacific. You're telling them where to go, you're telling them what to do, and everything is being done essentially in real time. And once we get to that point, you'll see that in a little bit. But let's get the USS Litchfield here moving. So we'll tell it to go over here. Okay, to turn, click right on the C and select the turn command. Alright, so we'll do this. So it's going to start turning that direction. We get our own throttle configuration here, so we can personally get these ships to move and maneuver to our exact specification. It's pretty cool. Alright, we got a Hulk over here just chilling out. Clearly used for target practice, so we're going to use it as a target. So we'll grab one of these guns, and we will tell it to fire! Do some torpedo hitting. You know, I thought of possibly playing World of Warships today to try and get a little bit of that naval combat in. But I decided against it. You know, I think plenty of people have seen that game already. And, you know, that game is definitely fun. But, you know, there are certain things that have been embellished on that game to make it a little easier, a little more accessible. Whereas this game definitely takes the simulation up to the next level in certain areas. Not everything is better than, say, you know, how it's presented in World of Warships, but the strategic scale of this game is, I don't know of any other game that brings it to this type of scale. So we just finished ordering our ship to do some target practice, and we received these. We receive a letter, a report that Pearl Harbor has been attacked. And it reads as follows. December 7th, 1941 at 0600. We have had reports on a Japanese assault on Pearl Harbor. The attack commenced at 7:48 a.m. Hawaiian time. It is believed the port was attacked by over 300 Japanese aircraft in 2 waves, consisting of fighters, dive bombers, and torpedo bombers. 8 battleships have been damaged, 4 of which had been sunk. 3 cruisers and 3 destroyers were also damaged. In total, 188 U.S. aircraft were destroyed, 2,403 Americans were killed, and 1,178 others were wounded. Important installations such as power stations, dry docks, the shipyard, and fuel and torpedo storage facilities were not attacked. Enemy losses are reported to be 29 aircraft and 5 midget submarines. Now, as people like to do when it comes to historical events, there's been questions on why, when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, why they only came in 2 waves. Some believe that if a third wave was launched, that many other areas, such as the power stations, especially the fuel, the dry dock, stuff like that, stuff that's meant to supply and help repair ships and so forth, if they were to take those things out, then America as a naval force would have been knocked out far more severely in the Pacific than where they were at originally with the 2-wave attack. And some believe that it was a misstep on the commander Nagumo, I believe his name is, for the Japanese Navy that commenced the attack. There's a couple reasons for this. One, it's believed that the Japanese naval force at the time that attacked Pearl Harbor lacked sufficient logistics, munitions. I said musicians there. Munitions, fuel, bombs, things of that nature, to really launch a 3rd wave. It's important to understand part of the reason why they attacked Pearl Harbor is that the goal, as Japan was growing as a superpower and they were trying to get more and more resources for their war efforts, they needed fuel, lots of it. And with their invasion of China and the horrible atrocities performed at Nanking, the U.S. cut off their fuel supply line. They didn't want to be part of it. And with only about 2 years worth of fuel supplies estimated to fuel their nation, their naval, their navies and armies, eventually the decision had come to the point where they saw no other way but to attack America's naval force in order to cripple it long enough for Japan to take over the Pacific and hold it down, essentially. But with the attack on Pearl Harbor, a 3rd wave probably wouldn't have been realistic, just with what they had, with the logistics that they had going into it. Another one I also recently learned about was Nagumo was worried that if he had launched a 3rd wave, that, with their carriers completely spent of their aircraft for a third attack wave on the island, that a possible surprise naval force consisting of, I believe it was the three U.S. Pearl Harbor-based carriers that were not accounted for when the attack began. He was concerned that those carriers may launch a surprise attack, greatly endangering the Japanese carriers that were involved in the Pearl Harbor attack, and didn't want to take that risk. Those three carriers, one of them being, I want to say it was I think the Hornet was there. The other one is the famous USS Enterprise. I don't remember what the third carrier was, but they were specifically not to dock at Pearl Harbor during the coming days before the Battle of Pearl Harbor, specifically because of the breakdown in communications between negotiations of Japan and America, as well as a lot of cues, as well as missed cues of a possible incoming attack. And so it was decided that the three carriers were best to be left out at sea to conduct naval drills. And in this case, they were right on the money, as a big portion of the Navy at the harbor was either damaged or sunk, and did cause us to enter in a war at a great disadvantage for several months until I want to say probably about the Battle of Midway, when things really tipped back in the favor of the United States. But enough of me gabbing about that portion. Let's go back to the combat button here. That brings us back to this screen. Alright, so you got plus 50 war bonds. That's how you get resources in this game. It's done through war bonds. So you do missions, you accomplish stuff, and you'll get more resources in the term of war bonds here to help continue to fuel the war effort in the Pacific. Alright, defend against any remaining hostiles. So we've been attacked by the Empire of Japan. Pearl Harbor has been bombed. Enterprise reports it is in the vicinity. We should help defend it in case there are more hostiles present. Order the Litchfield to move closer to the aircraft carrier. Okay. So grab this guy, and we'll tell him to go along with the USS Enterprise. Okay, let's get this guy going here. Speed it up. Squadrons are listed here. This fleet has 2 squadrons. Okay. Click and drag this status bar. Okay. Oh. Now drop the status bar into bigger squadron. Okay. This has combined the 2 squadrons into one. Click the squadron's header. Okay. Right-click on the C and order the squadron to move. An order given to a squadron will apply to all ships. Alright. So we will do just that. Ships in a squadron will move in formation. They are currently in a circle formation. Clicking the status bars of a ship selects that ship, and double-clicking on it focuses on that ship. Select the USS Enterprise. Okay. Focus on it. We need a scout in the area for lingering enemy forces. Alright. Select the bomber flight. So that'll be these guys right here. Right-click on a point where you wish to send the flight. Let's see, where should we send this? I guess maybe right here? Carriers must move with the wind to launch. The wind's direction is marked on the sea. Yeah, so that was for naval aircraft carriers. You know, they have a very short deck, you know, compared to like an airfield. Aircraft have to keep moving really fast at a very short distance. Are you going to hit this guy? Are you going to hit this guy? I don't know. I'm a little worried. You going to hit this guy? You going to hit this guy? Oh boy. Oh boy. Okay. So carriers have to move with the wind. Because what they'll do is it'll help push and give additional lift to fighters and bombers flying off of a deck. Alright, select these dudes. Alright, so we're gonna go check out this area, we're gonna go scout it. Now something I wish was done in this game that I am kind of disappointed with is that the aircraft, even though they're different types of aircraft, they all have the exact same model. I don't know of a single aircraft in the whole Navy that looked exactly like this. Each naval aircraft, whether it was a Dauntless, Avenger, a Hellcat, a Wildcat, you know, Corsair, they all had very different body types. And this ain't it, Chief. This ain't it. I'm hoping there are... I'm honestly hoping there are mods made for this game that can help improve the model quality for these type of things. All right, we found a what is this? Kamikaze. What is that? Ah, that just what is that? Is that destroyer? Or is... Can't tell. Probably destroyer. Yeah, it says right there. The Hamikaze. It's a destroyer. Alright, move the slider up to raise the flight's aircraft, or to raise the flight's target altitude. So these are Dauntless, these are dive bombers. So we're going to bring this up so that they approach high. Dauntless aircraft need to approach at high altitude in order to successfully dive bomb. Okay, we're going to speed this up. Alright, looks like we tagged it pretty good. Uh-oh, picked up something on sonar. Japanese submersible has approached the vessel. Not good. While a submerged enemy is detected, its position will be sporadically highlighted. Sonar has limited range and can be temporarily evaded by submarine. Only ships with depth charges can damage submerged enemies. Being that this is a destroyer, we have just such a weapon. Okay, when visible, right-click the submarine and select Attack. Oh. It's down there. Since it has been given a separate order, the USS Litchfield has left its formation. We'll see if this is going to automatically use our depth charges or if we need to do it separately. Oh, there we go. We can see it right there. Oh, looks like it's got its periscope up. Looks like that was the last of them. Click the rejoin button to return to formation.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
I wasn't sure if he was going to do the whole speech there. New objective, excuse me. Bridge tactics. Take command of the U.S. Pacific Fleet. Okay, so we're in an area that has a lot more ships. It's the Enterprise. We're currently commanding Task Force 8. That's what they call these big naval groups. They're known as task forces. Now, when we did that attack earlier, sinking that naval sub, it's important to note that one of the earliest shots fired in the conflict was actually, I believe it was by a U.S. destroyer sinking a Japanese submarine right outside of the harbor, at least not too far from it. That was the first indication that the Japanese were attacking, were planning an attack on the harbor, but unfortunately, due to many issues, which I won't go into here, that sentiment was never properly relayed or given serious thought of the possibility until it was too late. If you want to know more about the exact events of what happened during that day, I highly recommend watching a uh, either the best way is to definitely learn from historians, either by watching a documentary or reading a book that details the events. But if that's not really your thing, the next best thing I could definitely recommend is not watching that god awful Pearl Harbor movie. That that movie was hot garbage, with the exception of the cool visuals during the actual attack. Instead, watch an actual historically accurate film that leaves a lot of that Hollywood BS aside and focus on historical realism and historical facts. Watch a movie called Tor Tor Tor. It was made in the 60s. It was made in the 60s. Interestingly enough, it was a movie that was filmed with two completely different film studios. It was actually a co-op effort between an American film studio and a Japanese film studio, recording the events of Pearl Harbor, showing an unbiased view on what happened in that attack, as seen on both sides. And it is if you're into practical effects, there are practical effects in that movie that will blow your mind. And it's kind of sad that that movie, um, a lot of the practical effects that happened actually happened off camera, because there was a miscommunication as to when to do the attack, and so everybody involved in that film launched the attack, where a big portion of the cameras that were supposed to record the attack, specifically on like the destroyers and battleships and stuff, weren't in proper positions to record at the time and weren't recording. So there was a good portion of stunts that didn't get recorded, but the stuff that did get recorded is still impressive to this day. Like, even CG heavy stuff, that you try and see that try and really replicates the chaos of combat. Don't hold a candle to that film. And it's really unfortunate that that movie kind of got panned uh, when it came out, due to just different reasons. I think just the at the time, showing a film like that where it shows both the American and the Japanese perspective, still uh, relatively close from when the events actually happened. Because you got to remember, that was roughly around 20-25 years that film came out after that event had taken place. Probably a little more, probably around 25 years, 25, 30 years. So for a lot of people living, it was still very much fresh in their minds. Um, the American public wasn't into it, but the film is an amazing film that does a great job of portraying history. Um, and a YouTuber that I admire very much, that I love watching his content, History Buff, the History Buffs channel. Um, if you're into history at all, definitely check out his channel. He goes over a lot of stuff about history, specifically about movies, reviews about the history behind it, the movie itself, and how accurate it is, how inaccurate it is. He actually reviews I was gonna say Pearl Harbor. He actually reviews Tor Tor Tor, and kind of goes over a lot of history, both outside the movie and inside the movie. Um, and does a great job of discussing that film. Um, Highly recommend both watching that Tor 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 and the History Buffs review of Tor Tor Tor, if you were interested in learning more about the history of that time period, which I greatly do recommend. Um, you know, Always understand your history, otherwise you will be doomed to repeat it. Oh, all right. So I'm actually going to plan to end it right here. This was specifically for the beginning portion of the attack on Pearl Harbor, away from the harbor. Um, but as you can see, this game is not limited to just a small location. This game expects you to create, manage, move, and attack with various naval task forces throughout the entire Pacific until you basically win the war or lose it. So, let's just take it. Oh, I guess we still have to select it. Okay. All right, game. All right, do I really need to do this? Do I really need to do this? All right, what am I doing? Right click on the midway over there. Right click on the map within range. Okay. 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 Yes, I'm aware. I'm aware. Alright, am I able to save it? Yes, I am. Alright, let's save it. Save this as Hawaii. And when we come back, we're going to get a PT boat's eye view of the attack in a bit of a more arcadey fashion. Stay tuned, fellow dancers. We'll be taking a break. And we'll be back real soon.